Good morning. It is a wonderful morning today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that everybody seems to have on their mind these days, and that is whether or not I should buy a second home, or whether I should rent a second home, or whether I should sell my home. And I wanted to just kind of share with you some of the numbers that we've been seeing and how that's affecting people. Because I think a lot of people are thinking it's really a great idea, and it can be a wonderful idea to do one of these three things. And there are several reasons why people are really doing this. The first would be that interest rates are really low, and because interest rates are low, they think, or many people think, that it's a good time. The other is that, frankly, there's been a lot of money flowing into the system, and credit is pretty widely available. And some people have done well in the stock market, and they're a little bit worried about the stock market, and they're like, well, where should I be putting my money right now? Should I be putting it in real estate? And this is happening really at the end of each cycle, almost every time. So I remember the first time I learned about this was before I actually saw it firsthand, and that was reading some of George Soros's work when he was talking about the boom bust cycle. And when he was talking about the boom bust cycle, he was talking about how, as things get into the boom phase, money starts finding its way out of the markets and into real estate. And that has happened several times in my career. And I think we're in that phase again. So I wanted to talk a little bit about buying, renting, and selling a home. And are you in the market, by the way, for a second home? Just put a one if you are, or if you're thinking about selling a home or something like that. Just put a one in the comment. I'd like to know. Um, so yes, we have low interest rates, and COVID-19 has been really driving a lot of people, we're seeing, to wanting to buy either a personal getaway house or a rental home. So figuring out how to pay for it is the first thing that a lot of people come to us for. So we just kind of want to talk a little bit about how people, how to think about this, at least how we like to think about it. The first would be the traditional mortgage, your 15 year, your 30-year, or an ARM. Now, in most states, there's a jumbo limit, as you probably know, of $548,000. That tends to be a consideration when people are looking at this. But one of the biggest things is that there's a change in the Tax and Jobs Cut Act. That it's called the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. So basically, what that rule says is that if you have $750,000 or more, that's in debt. That actually is your max, right? You can go up to $750,000, and then that's the max that you can do. So you could do a traditional mortgage, or you can cash out, right? So you can cash out and refinance your home, take the difference of that money, and then buy a house. Or you can do securities based lending. If you have a portfolio, you can borrow against it, and you can buy your next home. So the question becomes, what's the best way to do that? So the only way to know is to run scenarios. But I would consider those three options if you're thinking about buying a second home, or doing a rental property. How are you going to finance that? So one of the things that I've found, that most people, when they're thinking about doing a rental property or something like that, and I've been looking at the numbers, the rates of return that people have actually got on rental properties, and comparing that to other alternatives, and almost invariably, it's the rate of return is a lot less than what people think it's going to be. And I'll tell you why. Mainly because what winds up happening is people need to take on more debt when they do that, and they usually need a bigger down payment on the next property, and they're also they usually put their other investments at risk when they do that, because they tend to have to have bigger cash reserves to offset the fluctuations in need for cash. They also tend to have higher expenses than they think they're going to have. Usually, beyond the purchase price, you've got repairs, utilities, homeowners associations, ongoing costs for the property that are generally not incorporated in their expected rate of return of the rental property. So, the other thing we've seen is in coastal communities, flood risk, wildfires, things like that have caused the rate of return to go down. So people oftentimes think they're going to make much higher rates of return than they actually realize. And many times they don't even realize that's happening until after they sell it. I mean, and that becomes an issue, because when you sell, a lot of people don't know this, but you depreciate the property, right? Think, hey, I'm getting a tax deduction. That's better. But when you sell, there is a recapture of that depreciation. 25% of that recapture is taxed to you. So think about what that means. If you have a $500,000 property, just to make numbers round, and you depreciate it over time, and $250,000 of that has been depreciated over time, then you sell it. That $250,000 in depreciation multiplied times 25%, that's your tax. So that is taxable. So that's something that really kind of it lowers the rate of return significantly. I was on the phone with another client of ours who had a property for years, over a decade, and after you kind of compounded it all out, the rate of return was really dismal. And this was in a nice area in Chicago. So I think it's important to understand what you're really getting into. Sometimes it can be amazing. I have noticed, like with certain clients in California, Oregon, Washington, they can have really great rates of return. It tends to be very lumpy, but right now we're in a period where people are feeling like, maybe I should be buying real estate more. And that's I think that's going to cause a continued upward movement in the prices, and then people are going to it will probably slow down pretty rapidly after that. So as the stock market and the government is pumping more money into the system, rates are being kept down low, although they have been rising lately. Um, I think that's going to continue that process. But when you're thinking about that, it's really important that you get a reliable team. So make sure that you have the right CPAs and attorneys to help you. If you do a rental situation, you haven't done it before, you're probably going to want to set up an LLC to limit your liability. So there's some additional expense there. But you'll need an attorney, CPA, a good real estate agent, property managers if you really need it. And a lot of times it might make sense for you to have a wealth strategist or a financial advisor like us find the right one that can help you actually get the numbers worked out so you can make the right decision for you. It's really a personal decision based on your finances. I find that a lot of people do that prematurely, or if they started out with that their entire life. I mean, I have a client that I could think of all the time who very, very young age, he just did rental properties all his entire life, and he made a small fortune doing that, a pretty good fortune doing that. And it took his entire life to really realize it. And then I've seen some people that just speculate in short term and have done very, very well. So there's a little bit of hit and miss in the real estate market. So there's no perfect asset. Stocks are good, bonds, they all have their time and their place. So right now, people are thinking real estate. If you ever want any opinion on that, let us know. But just keep in mind those aspects that I mentioned when you're making your decision. All right. I hope you're having a great day. We'll talk to you later.